Welcome to the fastest stuff in town. Today we're going to Masech this Yevamot stuff, Pei Dalid. We are going to begin on Pei Dalid Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah, a new parak. Yesh mutaros l'baleihin v'asuros l'yevameihem. There's sometimes a woman is mutter to her husband. However, she will be usher to the yavam in the case that her husband would die. She would be usher to that brother. On the other hand, it's possible the other way around. Mutaros l'yevameihem v'asuros l'baleihin. The Mishnah is going to explain examples of both categories. Mutaros l'elu. There are circumstances where the woman is mutter to her husband and to the yavam, which means they would just be able to perform hibum, which is a normal circumstance, and the Mishnah is not going to give examples for that. V'asuros elu, and sometimes she's usher to the husband and to the yavam. So now the Mishnah elaborates. Ve'elu mutaros l'baleihin v'asuros l'yevameihem. These are the cases where a husband should be mutter to, but usher to her brother, to his brother. So if you have a kohen hedyot, shenasa es almana. And we're going to focus on the language over here. You have a regular kohen who marries an almana. Now a kohen hedyot is allowed to marry an almana. However, yeshul ach kohen gadol. The brothers are kohen gadol. So in this situation, if the kohen hedyot would die and they would be childless, she would not be able to do yibum because an almana is not allowed to marry kohen gadol. So she's mutter to the baal, but usher to the yavam. That's case number one. Another is a chol. Let's say we're talking about a kohen. Now you have a man who's a chol, which means he himself has this invalidity about himself. Shenasa kashera. Now he marries a kashera. Now by doing that, she becomes a chalala. But the reality is that marriage is mutter. However, v'yeshul ach kosher. He has a brother who's a kosher. So because he married her, so now she's no longer allowed to do yibum. Says Rashi, kohen aser l'yama shneschalo b'bias chol. Since she had bia with her husband, who was a chol, so there she becomes posel. As the pasuk says, Rashi quotes, "V'bas kohen kisiel izar v'chol mutar b'kshera." So a chol is allowed to marry this woman. However, he will make her into a chalala, and therefore she would not be able to do yibum with the brother. Third case, Yisrael shenasa bas Yisrael, a regular case, non-Kohen marries a bas Yisrael who's kosher, v'yeshul ach mamzer, but the brother's a mamzer, and therefore she's usher to do yibum with him. Or mamzer shenasa mamzeres, which that marriage is fine because a mamzer can marry a mamzeres, v'yeshul ach Yisrael, and there's a brother who's just a regular kosher, so should not be able to do yibum with him because she's a mamzeres. So all these cases, mutaros l'baleihin v'asuros l'yevameihem. Again, it says it again that she's mutter to her husband, but not to the brother. And now we see the opposite case. Ve'elu mutaros l'yevameihem v'asuros l'baleihin. That she's usher to her husband, but mutter to the yavam. Kohen gadol shekidesh es alman, and we're going to be focusing on this language of the Mishnah. It says that the Kohen gadol did kedushin only to an almana. Now, a Kohen gadol is not supposed to marry an almana, but because he only did kedushin, says Rashi, avol nasa nischal b'biyasai. If, let's say, the Kohen gadol actually married her and had bia with this almana, then she would become a chalala, yasur l'yavama. And then l'yavama hedyot, she would not be able to do yibum with a kohen hedyot. But therefore, that's the reason why it says the case of shekidesh, v'yeshul ach kohen hedyot, she is actually mutter to that man because she did not become a chalala because it was only kedushin. That's case number one. Kohen, who is a kosher, shenasa chalala. Now, once he did that, that is something which is usher to him. Even though the other way around we said it was okay, that we said a kohen hedyot, a chalal can marry a kshera. However, over here, a kosher is not supposed to marry a chalala. So the issue is on the woman has a psul, that's not a permitted marriage. We'll discuss that at greater length. V'yeshlo achol, but there's a brother who's a chol, so she's a cholol and the brother's a chol, so that's not a problem. But because the kohen is a kosher, he was not supposed to marry a cholola. Another case, Yisrael shenasa mamzeres v'yeshlo ach mamzer. If Yisrael marries a mamzeres, which he was not supposed to do, but the brother's a mamzer, so a mamzeres to a mamzer is okay. And lastly, mamzer shenasa bas Yisrael v'yeshlo ach Yisrael. So again, mutaris l'yavomehem v'yisuris l'balehen. If you have a mamzer who marries a bas Yisrael, which is not allowed, but the brother is a Yisrael, so in that situation, we say that it's that's asur l'balehen, because the husband who's a mamzer should not have married the bas Yisrael. However, the brother is a kosher and the bas Yisrael is a kosher. Okay. Fine. And then we have, again, in this we talk about mutter, because that's all obvious. And then the last is ve'elu asurus elu. Kohen gadol shenases almana. So you can hear that language is different over here. The Kohen gadol actually had bia with the almana, which made her into chalola, v'yeshlo ach Kohen gadol. And the brother's has a brother's a Kohen gadol, so because she's a chalola, she's not shaykh to him. O Kohen hedjit, or let's say you have a Kohen hedjit, who is a kosher, shenasa chalola, that he married a chalola, v'yeshlo ach kosher, and there's a brother that is a kosher. So Kohen hedjit, who is a kosher, should not have married the chalola, and the brother also would not be able to marry the chalola. Another case where they're both asur, Yisrael shenasa mamzeres, which he's not supposed to do, v'yeshlo ach Yisrael, and the brother is also Yisrael. So neither of them are supposed to marry her. Mamzer shenasa bas Yisrael, which is not allowed. V'yeshlo ach mamzer, and there is a brother, the brother is a mamzer. So mamzer married a bas Yisrael, so the bas Yisrael should not have married the mamzer, either brother. So asurus le'elu elu. Ushar kohanashim mutaris l'b'meihem. Other than those cases, we're going to say there's actually Tanam Shire, there's cases that are left out, but other than that, for the most part, the husband is mutter, and so is the yavam. Fine. Now we continue the next part of the Mishnah. Shniyos medivri seifrim. So when we say shniyos, that's referring to like a dini d'Rabbanan of erva. Shniya labal v'li shniya liyavam. We say it's a shniya to the husband, but not a shniya to the yavam. What is that referring to? So Rashi says like this: a shniyos is, for example, aim imai, mother's mother shall baal the husband, v'lo shel yavam. So the issue is the mother's mother of the baal. Let's say he has brothers from the father, but not from the mother's side. So in that situation, asur labal materas yavam. She's asur to the husband because that's shniyas arayas, the grandmother, but it's on the mother's side. But his brother is not related to her from the mother's side, but from the father's side. He's only a half brother, so therefore he's actually mutter. Mutaras yavam. Shniya liyavam v'lo shniya labal. It's possible the other way around. Asur liyavam mutaras labal. If some, let's say the yavam is related to this woman is his mother's mother, which is a shniya mediri seifrim. So she would be asur to him, but not to the half brother related through the father. So in that case we say labal asura liyavam mutaras v'lo shniya labal asur liyavam mutaras labal. Shniya lazel lazeh, asur lazel lazeh. If there's shnias to both of them, then they're both asur to her. Ein lo ksuba v'lo peiros. So there's no ksuba in that case of shnias. There's also no ksuba, which we'd be referring to the nechsit tzayin barzel, which we've discussed at length before, that the monies in which she brings in which he has rights to, and it's assessed based on the way it was, and it's like tzayin barzel, that it doesn't change as far as the obligations. V'lo peiros. Says Rashi, Ein mashalim la peiros nechsim alug sha'achol mishalah. That you don't have to pay back the peiros nechsim alug, that you ate from her. The Afal Gav says Rashi Nekaman Beksuvas Tiknu Piroikna Tachas Paris Nechsimalug Shu Eichel. The reason why we allow the man to eat the Nechse Malug, which he has a right to the Paris, but she has still connection to the land, so the change in value is on her, even though that's true, and because of like an exchange of if she was in captivity that he would have to redeem her. So on this says Rashi V'zu ein chayev livdaisa. Here actually there's no chayev to redeem her. The Lord Karinin Bey v'ois vinech l'intoi, that she's like to your wife. Even so, you don't have to pay to her the fruits that she ate. So even though you would think because he doesn't have to redeem her, so he really shouldn't have any entitlement to the fruits, nonetheless he doesn't have to pay them back. And we skip a couple of lines. Kansua nami deloy tigva mine paros she'achol b'tanai ksuba shel piroikna shutanai based in shein kasu b'shtar ksuba. So there's a kanas that again she won't be able to collect these fruits. So even though he has no chiyuv to redeem her, still he isn't chayiv to return the fruits that he ate. So that's the chiddush in this particular situation, which I think is actually a question over here. Yeah, and I got this wrong. TA7 is a hard question because it's just snuck in this Rashi. Maha bir shtia in laperos. My kamashmon hakol isha in laperos. All right, what exactly does that mean? So and it says Rashi. It's the only way you can get this is through Rashi. So this is how he explains it. Shein chayiv l'shalim lo. He doesn't have to pay her back. Paris nixim elug she'achal. The alphapi shein chayiv b'proikna. Even though he has no obligation to redeem her, nonetheless, he still doesn't have to pay back the peros in this situation for Shnias Arayos. That's TA7. TA7. Okay. All right. Let's continue. So, what else does Shnias Arayos not have entitlement to? Not to the Ksuba, not to peros, v'lo mazonos. Also not mazonos. So Rashi says, "Luma boy heicha diyasva tute the loy kafinen leilazuna dab almud v'yotzikoi el afil im halacha medinas yam." Even if, let's say, they traveled abroad, v'lavasa v'achla lo mishalim, and she borrows and eats, he doesn't have to pay. V'lo belois, and not also the worn out garments. Says Rashi, Imadain yeshlo belois ushechakim min abegadav. If you have this worn out garments, shachnisaloi eina noitaltan kishiyitza to kansin rabbanon. Again, he doesn't have to. She doesn't take them when she leaves, and sekanas that the rabbanon give. Okay, but Vlad kosher. However, in this case, because it's only din to rabbanon, a child from this relationship would be kosher. The kaif and oisel haitzi. However, when it comes to shnias arayos, we're still going to force them to leave the marriage. Alman l'kohen gadol, gerusha b'chutz l'kohen hedjet, mamzeres and asin Yisrael, bas Yisrael and isin l'mamzer, yishul hen ksuba. In all these situations, and the Gemara is going to explain the reason, there's still a ksuba involved. Okay, so these are cases of chayv lavin. So my area, for the Gemara, actually, let's look at question 13 first. Kohen Gadol, and he writes and underlines it, Shekidesh Almana, he only did Kedushin Umes, and then the Kohen Gadol dies. Yishul Ach Kohen Gadol, O Kohen Hedit Imuteres Liavim. So is he allowed to do Yibum? So again, since it's Kohen Gadol, we're going to say that Kohen Gadol Asura. She's still going to be usher to him, even if all they did was have Kedushin. However, for a Hedit is Muteres. And the reason is because for a Kohen Gadol, she's an Almana. Right? So she's not allowed to marry an Almana. He's not allowed to marry an Almana because his brother died. But for a Hedit, it's Mutter because they only did Kiddush. And because they only did Kiddush, that's why she's not a Chalala. That's why she's still allowed to do Yibum with a Kohen Hedget. Okay. So, Frak the Gemara. So, my area, the Tani Nasa Lisni Kiddush. Why, when we talked about this case above, it kept saying Nasa? For example, a regular Kohen who actually marries an Almana and has a brother who's a Kohen Gadol. A Chalal Kohen who marries a Kshera, V'yeshlo Ach. Why does that have to say that? Just say it's a case of Kiddush. Why does that have to say Nasa in those cases? Maybe the only reason why we say this din is that the regular Kohen actually married her, this Almana, and then this man died. So the brother's a Kohen Gadol, so therefore he's usher to him, which is mashma. If it wouldn't say that, only there, because it was nasa the havi le'aseh v'le'aseh of a kiddush. If it's only kedushin, then aseh v'deichel aseh, aseh v'deichel lo'aseh. So you should push it off. A hakula pirkin aseh v'le'asehu v'aseh aseh v'deichel lo'aseh. So the whole question is, this whole parak is this situation that we find. You have, as Rashi says, an asay, besulam amav yikach, right? That he's supposed to take a besula, v'lo beula, v'loisas almanu l'sikach, v'en asay di yibum, doiches loisasay v'asay. You have not just a los asay, but you also have an asay. So of course it's not going to be doicha. So we're going to say like this: Nishum de kabola misnei seif. You're right. In that case, it doesn't have to say shenasa. It could say Shekidish as well, right? So why does it mention the case of Nisuin, right? It's not to make a diak, but maybe by Kedushin it's different. No. By Kedushin, it's the same thing. It would still be Aser. The reason why is because of the Seifa. The Kohen Gadol Shenasa Salmana Dafka. The only time is because if it's the Kohen Gadol actually married her and made her a Chalala, that she's Aser to the Kohen Hedget. Nasa the Shabbat of a Kiddush Shari'ah. So because of that, since he only did Kedushin, so she did not become a Chalala, and that's the reason why she's allowed to do Yibum. So Tani Namiration Nasa. So by the Tani Mishum Seifa, listening Mishum Mitziyasa, so it says Kohen Gadol Shekidish Es Almana. You have a Kohen Gadol who did Kedushin with a widow, V'yeshlo Ach Kohen Hedget, right? And there is a brother who's a Kohen Hedget. So what do we say in that case? In that situation, it's mutter, it's usher to the Baal, because the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to even do Kedushin to an Almana, but Yeshul Ach Kohen Hedget, as a regular Kohen Hedget. So when it says, El Mishum Bas Bukta, Tekaboilu Misni Cholosh Bas Bukta, Tekaboilu Misni Cholosh Nasa Kshera. It actually is because we wanted to mention this other situation, this case of a Chol who marries a Kshera. Taima the Nasa the Shavi Chalola. It's because they actually did Nisuin. Of a Kiddush Shari'ale, Misham Hachin Katani Nasa. Fine. So my iri Tani Almana, Lisni Besula. Why does it mention the case of an Almana? Mention a Besula, and the Rashi says Ukshemes, Nasa Salmana. She becomes an Almana, which again is problematic to a Kohen Gadol. So just say simple. Why say that, he married an Almana? Just say a case that he married a Besula, as we continue to pay down the base. So where it says, V'chiteim aksavar haitana nisuin harishainim mapilin, that the original Kedushin we go after. In other words, she's a Besul at this point, so therefore she should be Zaykik to do Yibum, even with a Kohen Gadol. Right, so maybe that's what it's coming to tell you. We should say Nesuin Harishainim Mapilim, and therefore the fact that she's an Almana, we don't look at the fact that she's an Almana. We look at the fact that we look at the original marriage. In the original marriage, she was a Basula, so maybe we would allow her to do Yibum even with the next brother who's a Kohen Gadol. So Harichol Shnasa Kshera. But we know when it comes to a Chol man who marries a Kshera V'Oyam Rein Nesuin Harishainim Mapilim, we don't say that's Svara. The reality is that if a Cholol marries her, she becomes a Cholola. So we don't say, oh, well, no, at the time she was married, she was a kshera. No. Now, havadi mishum seifa, mishum nekabayla misni seifa, kohen gadol, shenasas almana, v'yeshul ach kohen gadol, o kohen hedjit, dafka, almana. In that case, because it says kohen hedjit, it's dafka and almana. Of a basula, chazile, when it comes to a basula, be fit to the kohen hedjit. Mishum hachi gatani almana. Maska Rav Papa, Im Isa, if it's true, we know that the din is a mitzri sheni, shenatza mitzri shena, which we talked about as a machlokas, what the din is, b'na sheni havi. According to this opinion, if the man is a mitzri sheni and the woman is a mitzri shena, we say that the child is a sheni, which means we go after the woman. So lisni nami mitzri sheni shenatza shnei mitzriyos. Why don't we mention the case of a mitzri sheni who married two mitzriyos, achas rishayna v'achas shniya. One is rishayna, one is a shniya. The habli banim rishayna u'shniya, and he had children from both of them. So we say like this: im netzuv ki orchayu. If they marry in the way, in other words, the shlishi married a Yisraelis and the sheni married mitzris, which is the proper way. Then that marriage is mutter, because they're allowed to marry each other. A shlish is allowed to marry Yisraelis, and a sheni can marry mitzvahs. The asuras l'yavamehem be usher to the brothers, because, as we said, they're not on the same level of generations. If let's say it would be the other way around, notzuv mutaras l'yavamehem asuras l'balayan. So that case would make sense, because you would find that if the shlishi could possibly marry the mitzri, or the sheni could have married the Yisraelis, so it'd be asul balehen. Mutars elu. When are they mutar? Giyaris, if they're they're converted and they're already beyond that time. Asurus elu ilonis aloinios. That if it's an islandess, says Rashi, Yisraelis im sheni nasa Yisraelis v'hi islandess asur lo mishum di Yisraelis he ukshmeis asur yavam mishum asher tele probably islandess. So the question basically is saying, why do we mention these cases where there's four categories? You could also use this case of mitzri sheni. The answer is kind of a shire. You're right. This case could have been mentioned, but we don't mention everything. So my shire to high shire, what else is being left out? That you left this one out. Psua daka. Also, when it comes to a psua daka, it's possible you can say there's four categories by a psua daka. Says Rashi, Davi matzilu misni be kulhu. But psua daka shenasi Yisraelis. If let's say a psua daka married Yisraelis, which he's not allowed to do because he's also baba kahal. So as Rashi says, asur labala umateris liyavama. He would be not allowed to be married to that. She's not allowed to be married to this baal, to this man who's a psua daka. But the brother would be okay if he's not a psua daka, and you can use this for all four cases. So he said, now, imishim psua daka lav shira dehatanule chayvi lavin. Our Tana is mentioning chayvi lavin. Atu what? Chayvi lavin milu katani. It's not mentioned. V'hadar tani. V'hakatani koin hedjit shenas almana. The chol shenasa kashera. These are cases of chavi lavin. A kohen hedjit marrying an almana is allowed, but then a chol shenasa kashera. So it says nahahu by the chol it's tzrichale. Lashminan can Rabbi Yehuda Marav. The Rabbi Yehuda Marav, who is haru ksheras lenasal b'sun, as we alluded to, that it's someone who's a kshera woman is allowed to marry a puzzle man. So that's the chiddush of a chol shenasa kshera. I have a hakatani chol shenasa kshera of Yisrael shenasa bas Yisrael deishal ach mamzer. So in that there's no chiddush. So hanami loy mahadir misnahi dashmi'inan lav she'in shava b'koil. It's coming to teach you. It's a chiddush when it talks about a lav over here, which is not shava b'koil, not something which is applicable to all. The Kamash Malan, lav hashava b'kol, that it's a lav hashava b'kol by the case of mamzer. Hakatani Yisrael shenasa mamzeres v'yishal ach Yisrael. So actually it's true that this is what is left over. Question 14. Yesh asuros l'ba'alehem moteros l'ibameihem hechem shkachs l'oid asuros l'ba'alehem moteros l'ibameihem dahavi matzil l'misni el d'atan m'shayir. So it says, if you have two brothers, one is a Mitzri Sheni, one's a Mitzri Shlishi, and he marries and the Shlishi marries the Shnia, or the Shnia marries the Yisraelis, fine, or Petsuadaka Shanasi Yisraelis v'achav kosher. So those are the cases we said of Tanim Shire, of how these things are, some things are left out. Okay. Gufa. Getting back to what we said before. Omer Yehuda Marav. Lo his harak shares and also psul and zilsing more in kedushin. Beginning of the fourth parak, that a woman who is a kosher, we allow her to marry a man even though he's an apostle. Let's support this. They have a chol shnasa kshera. It says a chol man can marry a kshera woman. So my love, kohenes, we're talking about a kosher woman like a kohenes. Haruyaloi, umay kshera, kshera kahuna. It's saying that we're not zahir, that even her she's going to be kosher to kahuna. We're not strict about this. Lo, Yisraelis. It just means that we're talking about a woman who's Yisraelis. So my kshera, kshera kahal. It means that she's allowed to marry Enuit into the kahal. Yehachi, yeshul ach, kosher nami, kosher l'kahal. So when we say that there's a brother, so that also means he's kosher just stam to enter the kahal, to get married. M'chlal dehu pasol kahal, which is mashma that there's the opposite side is pasol kahal. So how is she mutter to the baal if she's pasol to the kahal? So it must be, it's talking about a kohen. Now a lot of kohen. Dehu kohen, he kohenes. No the area hakadisa. Just because this case must be talking about with a kohen doesn't mean that this is the other case as well. So Meisiv Rabin bar Nachman lo yikachu. Why does it say this? It's malamid she'ish musharis al yidei ish, that we find from this pasuk that a woman is actually mushar, that we don't want her to marry apostle. So Merava no kol heicha dehu mushar he musharis. Din is like this: anytime that we're strict on him, we're strict on her. Kol heicha dehu musar he mushara. If we're not strict on him, then we're not strict on her either. Okay. Says Rashi, Shikashem Shakayin Musar Sholikach Zain V'Chalola, just like a Kayin is Musar not to take a Zain or Chalola, Kachi Musharis Shalo Tisaenu. So too, she should not marry. However, Chol Hecha Dehu Lo Musar could go in Chol B'Kshera, where we allow the Chol to marry a Kshera woman, so too, the other way around. Then we're not going to be strict the other way around. We're going to learn this out elsewhere. A man or woman who does all certain sins. So we already know that we link the two. So why do we need this? Now, maybe it applies to everyone, like the Yisraelim. Of Lav Shein Shabbat B'Kol, for example, the case of Kohanim, which is Lav Shein Shabbat B'Kol, says Rashi, Habi Azlin L'Kul Mifter Nashim. Lo. Weiter, on Pehem Manal, V'Hari Tuma, the Lav Shein Shabbat B'Kol, we know, obviously, Yisrael is not Musar and Tuma, only Kohanim are, not Yisrael. The time of the Kasar B'Chmana B'nei Aaron V'lo B'nos Aaron. Halav Hachi Havamina Nashim Chayavais. Otherwise, you would think women are obligated. So my time, La Mishum de Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Lo. The Gamrinan Melo Yikachu. We learn out from the pasuk. From the pasuk, you would think the Tuma is even usher for a woman as well. We're going to stop there. Let's see if we can maybe come across another question. Okay. Question TA7 we did. Okay, TB. That's TA, TB. 8. Madua sarach pasuk, as we just did this. Why do we need a pasuk? Miyuchad l'hazer isha, to warn a woman, hapsula l'kahuna, a woman who's puzzled to the kahuna, shel tinasil kayin kasher, that she's not allowed to marry kasher kayin. V'hari kfar ksiv kra isha isha, hishav kasav isha isha chol inshin shibatayra. So why do we need a pasuk specifically to warn women who are puzzled to kahuna that she's not allowed to marry kayin? So the answer is like this. Either the Havamina is it's a lav shin shaba koil and isha's patura, because we're talking about a case of a kohenes, which is our kohen, which is not applicable to all, so maybe the din isn't the same. Oh, the Havamina limoid milav de tuma duluhuzhur benos aharon, because when it comes to tuma, we exclude women. So too, since in that situation we exclude women, you would think you exclude women here as well. Kamash one, we don't. I have time.